Hello, and welcome back to today's American Flyer Trains for the continuation of the rebuild of number 370, a General Motors, a GM American Flyer die-cast road diesel. It is a GP-7 from 1950. It is a Type 1. Of course, I'd started on the rear truck, and I thought once I had gotten at least it disassembled, I'd be ready to move on to the front truck. But then I decided to drop back and make sure everything else is in place, because what I like to do when I start working on the motor is have everything else finished so that I know then that I can start, when I finish the motor, I can start testing, and that everything else should be eliminated as being a possible problem. So let me get you caught up real quick. The weight that sits atop the front truck and the motor has been removed. It's been thoroughly cleaned. I got rid of the acute stickiness and gunk that was on the sides and top of that thing, which I think was probably rooted in the fact that it had some really old electrical tape on it that was holding the wire harness and some other wires in this little tray right here on top. Anyway, it's clean. It's very clean to the touch, so I'm good to go with that. The side frames were removed from both the front and rear trucks. They have been thoroughly cleaned, which includes washing to remove excess oil and grease, so they're ready to be reserviced. And on the rear chassis, I'm almost finished with it. It has been thoroughly cleaned and washed, and I've got the front two, or at least these two wheels, I don't know exactly which is front, these two wheels and their axle polished, and I've only got to go with these other set of wheels and axle to polish those, and I'll be ready for its lubrication. And I want to mention one thing about the front truck and motor assembly that I've noticed on my GP-7 and at least one other GP-7 that I had worked on. And that is how freely the front truck and motor swing left to right, front to back, and actually how far it drops down. This one has that problem as well. You can see how loose it is on the top of the yoke, in which that looseness right here causes it to be able to swing left to right, front to back. And that may not hamper the operation of the train, but I just think it's a little bit too loose. On my GP-7, when I pulled it from an estate sale box, it did not have this retainer ring. And as a matter of fact, it was dangling up underneath the train. If I picked it up by the chassis, the motor was just swinging, and it was held only in place by the wire, if you can imagine that. And the ball of solder that was on top provided the only support. Well, I fixed that on mine by finding out that what was missing was that retainer ring. Now, it appears on this one that the retainer ring has slid up, and I'm not sure how tight it is, but I plan to at least improve that by inserting another retainer ring up underneath it, or maybe just replacing this one altogether. These are not a slam dunk in order to pull and replace, because they can easily bend. So I think I'm going to try to insert an extra retainer ring underneath it. Now, I mentioned before about one of these wires being exposed right here. So in order to mitigate that and not have it as a risk moving forward, I just went ahead and cut the wire. I think it had some solder on it, but it was still a place that had been wrapped in electrical tape, which I don't really trust, very loosely in electrical tape. So I just went ahead and severed the wire, cleaned the ends off, made a physical connection, a solder connection, and of course before having connected it, I slid on a piece of shrink wrap and then pulled the shrink wrap back over and heated it up, warmed it up, and had it shrink down on top of it to get some strength and some protection. Now, the rear truck, as simple as it is, for all practical reasons, it's ready to go back. It just needs a little bit of lubrication, and then all it amounts to is attaching the chassis to the yoke that you see there, then attaching the side frames, and it's pretty much ready then to go without a lot of parts that have to go on it. But I decided then to switch my attention to the reverse unit. I wanted to get it cleaned and prepped and checked prior to doing the motor, because it controls so much on these trains. I wanted to have it in at least a little bit higher working standard. I don't know that it's going to be perfect. It may still present some problems, but I wanted to eliminate a few things. So basically what I did was is to remove the two fingerboards and the drum in order to just do some easy cleaning on them. The drum was cleaned by just washing and a little bit of polishing and alcohol, and it'll be lightly lubricated with CRC 226. Now, in order to loosen this up so that I could flip it over, it's just a matter of loosening one screw on the bottom of the chassis. That's it. That holds it on. As a matter of fact, there's the bracket for it right there. Just loosen that screw on the bottom of the chassis, and then you can rotate the drum. Now, just be careful with it because it's got a lot of wires attached to it, and you don't want to damage those. My next goal was to remove the fingerboard so that I could give the fingers a thorough check. And here's how I did that. I removed the fingerboards simply by using my heavier pair of needle nose pliers and grasping the tabs. There's going to be 4. There's 2 for this fingerboard, and of course this lower fingerboard's got these 2 right here. I grasp the tabs very firmly, pinch it very firmly, and just give it a gentle rotation. I usually try to hold the reverse unit and hold the needle nose really tight, and then just twist it back so that it is in alignment with the slot that's on the fingerboard. And then usually I can lift those up with my hand by pushing down on the tab and up on the board, except I do it very, very gently because you don't want to damage the board. And at this point, I'm usually using my smaller pair of needle nose pliers. I usually pinch inward on the reverse unit that releases a little bit of tension, and then these boards come right off. Just wiggle them gently, and there they come off. Now, the first thing I check on these is the condition of these slots. I have found these on my own trains to be so soaked in oil or smoke fluid or whatever that it weakens this board material, this press board material, particle board material that they use for these fingerboards, such that the point that these tabs just disintegrate. The ends just disintegrate. You can't have that. You've got to have these in really good condition so that you can twist the tabs and tighten this fingerboard down. So I check that. Next thing I do is I check the fingers themselves for holes. So this is not the fingerboard from the train. It's already on there, but I just check these fingers for holes, and then I check their vertical alignment and their horizontal positioning as well, and make sure that they have a little bit of downward positioning. They're downward, so which means when you press them against the drum, they'll have a required tension to maintain good contact. And then I check the end of the fingers to make sure they're turned up just a little bit. And then finally, while the fingers are still attached, I polish them very gently, just the bottoms right here at the contact point, with a rotary tool and a wire brush, just to polish them, and then I clean them with rubbing alcohol. And that's pretty much it. They are still attached to the wiring, but cleaning, that little part of cleaning, it is tedious. It's a little bit risky because you don't want that wire brush to hit any wires, but the results are real good. The next thing I do is I remove the drum so that it can be thoroughly cleaned, as well as the interior of the reverse unit. Now, the best thing I've found to do that with, and I use this for many other things, but particularly spreading trucks apart, is I use these ring pliers. I forgot what you call it. They are called retainer ring, I think, pliers. And no, they're not called retainer ring. They're called snap ring pliers. So instead of coming together when you squeeze the handle, they spread apart. Well, I use that to just put inside the reverse unit and just gently release the pressure, shake it a little bit, and out comes the drum. I do the reverse procedure to put it in. Spread it apart, drop the drum in. This drum has already been washed and polished, so it's ready for service. So that has been done. And then I just clean the inside of the reverse unit. Although it's not this one, I straighten all the tabs out to make sure they're perfectly straight, which will make putting the fingerboards back on easy. So all I'm going to do off camera is drop the drum back in, put the fingerboards back on their tabs, close it up, and reattach it to the chassis so that it's stable and in place while I start working on the motor. And that will be on some later videos.